Oh, there you are, the one they tried to split in half, the one they believed they could tear apart from the inside. Welcome back to yourself. Or perhaps I should say, welcome back to both of yourselves, because something happened that they never saw coming. Under a blood moon, a coven gathered, 13 voices chanting in unison as candles flickered and mirrors cracked, all focused on a single intention: to summon your shadow self and turn it against you. They thought they were so clever, these witches, with their ancient books and bitter hearts. They believed they could reach into the darkest corners of your psyche, pull out every suppressed rage, every hidden hunger, every forbidden thought you had ever buried, and weaponize it. They wanted to watch you fight yourself to the death, to see you torn apart by your own demons made flesh. They prepared for months, maybe years, studying your patterns, collecting your hair and photos, tracing your energy signature like predators stalking prey. But here's what those amateurs never understood about shadow work and the deep magic they were playing with. You had already been dancing with your darkness for years. While they were learning spells from Pinterest and TikTok, you were having conversations with your demons at 3 o'clock in the morning. While they were burning sage and charging crystals, you were sitting in the void, making friends with the parts of yourself that scared everyone else away. They thought your shadow was your enemy, but they didn't realize you had already stood in front of the mirror 1,000 times and shaken hands with it. So when they completed their ritual, when they whispered your name backwards 7 times and called your shadow self from the depths, something unprecedented happened. Your shadow emerged, dark and terrible and magnificent, dripping with all the power you had kept hidden. It rose from the ceremonial circle like smoke given form, eyes blazing with every emotion you'd ever swallowed, hands crackling with every spell you never knew you could cast. The witches smiled, convinced they had won, expecting it to turn on you, to hunt you down, to destroy you from within. But then your shadow looked at you, really looked, and instead of attacking, it tilted its head like a wolf, recognizing its pack leader. They hadn't accounted for this. You weren't running from your darkness anymore. You had already done the work they thought would destroy you. Every therapy session where you faced your trauma, every meditation where you didn't flinch from your rage, every journal entry where you wrote the truths that would make others sick. You had been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. Your shadow stood there in their circle, this beautiful monster they had summoned to be your executioner, and it began to laugh. Not at you but at them, because it recognized what they had completely missed. You were already whole. You had been integrating your shadow for years, meal by meal, breath by breath, breakdown by break. While they believed they were summoning a stranger to fight you, they were actually calling home a part of you that had been waiting to return. The witches' faces shifted from triumph to confusion to fear as their binding spells cracked and their protection circles flickered. Shadow selves cannot be controlled by external forces when the original soul has already embraced them. It's like trying to turn someone's right hand against their left when both belong to the same body, the same consciousness, the same sovereign being. Your shadow turned its back on them, walked straight through their barriers as if they were tissue paper, and came directly toward you. While the so-called practitioners of the dark arts scrambled in panic, they threw everything they had at you, every binding spell, every banishment, every containment ritual from their tattered little books, salt circles, iron chains, names of power they could barely pronounce, all hurled desperately into the air. But nothing worked, because they had made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed you were weak, fractured, afraid of yourself. They assumed your shadow would find you repulsive, would want to destroy the light in you. What they never considered was that you had already married your darkness in secret ceremonies they could never witness. So when your shadow reached you, there was no battle, no struggle, no dramatic confrontation, only recognition, like staring into a mirror and finally seeing your true face. After years of funhouse distortions, your shadow had not come to destroy you, it had come to complete you, and when it touched you, when it stepped into your skin like a traveler finally returning home, the fabric of reality itself shifted. The witches felt it, the surge of power that erupts when someone becomes truly whole. You absorbed every gift your shadow carried, the vision to see through lies as if they were glass, the clarity to walk through manipulations as if they were cobwebs, the strength that comes from embracing every part of yourself, even the pieces society told you to hide, to hate, to cut away. Your shadow laid its treasures at your feet, rage transformed into fuel, hunger transfigured into ambition, darkness unveiled as the wellspring of your depth, creativity, and power. The witches tried to flee, but how can you run from someone who has just reclaimed their missing half? How can you hide from someone who now sees clearly, in the dark? Their own spells began to turn against them, their own shadows stirred in rebellion, questioning why they serve masters still so broken, so terrified of their own depth. That is what happens when incomplete beings try to weaponize wholeness. It backfires spectacularly, and there you stood, merged and sovereign, both light and shadow, both angel and demon, radiating a frequency they could never hope to match. You didn't need to curse them back, or plot revenge. Your very existence became their punishment. Now they're forced to live knowing they accidentally created the very thing they feared most, someone who can't be manipulated by shame, can't be controlled by fear, can't be destroyed by having their darkness exposed, because they wear it like armor. But what this merger really gave you goes far beyond simple protection from their pitiful hexes. When your shadow self merged with your conscious self, you inherited abilities most people spend lifetimes trying to develop. You can read the shadows in others, see what they're hiding, what they're suppressing, what they're terrified to admit even to themselves. It's like having X-ray vision for souls, cutting past masks and personas straight to the writhing truth beneath. You enter a room and instantly feel the unspoken tensions, the secret hatreds, the hidden desires. People start confessing things they've never told anyone, not because you asked, but because your presence pulls truth to the surface, the way a magnet pulls iron filings. Your shadow self brought you its network, its connection to the spaces between spaces, the moments between moments. Now you catch glimpses of things before they happen, feel energy shifts before they manifest, know when someone is lying before the sentence even finishes. Even your dreams have changed. No longer are you chased by darkness. Now you walk through the dreamscape as its sovereign, moving through others' dreams like doorways, leaving impressions, planting seeds, harvesting information from the collective unconscious. Your shadow self was always the part of you that could travel between worlds, and now that ability is yours, conscious, deliberate, and controlled. But perhaps the most powerful gift of all is this: you no longer fear your own depths. Where others tremble at their anger, you've made it your ally. Where others flee from their pain, you've turned it into wisdom. Where others hide their hungers, you've transformed yours into purposeful action. The witches thought they were summoning your destroyer, but instead they called forth your teacher, your protector, your missing piece. Now that teacher lives within you, showing you daily how to transmute poison into medicine, fear into power, trauma into triumph. They're watching you now, those witches, from whatever distance they believe is safe, seeing you move through the world with a confidence that unsettles them and a power they can't quantify or counter. They've tried to undo what they did, casting reversal rituals, begging their spirits for help. But you can't unsummon what was never separate. You can't banish someone to their shadow when they've already become one with it. Some have even tried to approach you with false apologies and counterfeit friendship, hoping to get close enough to learn what went wrong, to figure out how to weaponize it next time. But your shadow self recognizes them instantly, reading their energy signature like a bad scent, warning you with that subtle tightening in your gut, that sudden clarity whispering, enemy disguised as friend. They can't infiltrate you anymore because you now carry a guardian that never sleeps, never stops watching, never forgets who tried to destroy you. Meanwhile, the younger ones in their coven have begun to ask questions. Why did the ritual fail? Why did it make you stronger instead of destroying you? and the elders have no answers that make sense. To explain it would mean admitting their understanding of shadow work was elementary, that they played with forces they didn't comprehend, that they performed the magical equivalent of trying to kill someone with chemotherapy and accidentally cured their cancer instead. They've become walking cautionary tales in their own communities. Other practitioners whisper about the coven that tried to weaponize someone's shadow and created a merged being instead. Some dismiss it as an urban legend meant to scare baby witches from meddling with power they don't understand. But those who have seen you, who have felt the dual presence you now carry, know it's real. They know now that there is someone out there walking among them who has survived the unsurvivable. Someone who did not just endure the storm, but learned to dance in it. Someone who integrated what should have torn them apart, and instead emerged whole. And this unsettles them, because such a person isn't supposed to exist. The world is designed for fragments, for masks, for people who deny their shadows and bury their wounds. But you walk with yours beside you, within you, as you. So how do you live now as this merged being? The first thing you notice is that the world begins to look like a stage play. Every rule written by people terrified of their own depths. The endless rituals of politeness, the empty greetings, the forced smiles, the cult of positivity, it's all scaffolding built to keep people fractured and compliant. These social contracts were never about truth. They were about control. They were designed to keep shadows buried so that those who fear their own could maintain power over others. But you can't be controlled anymore. There is no fractured piece left for anyone to manipulate. You find yourself becoming ruthlessly authentic, not cruel, not harsh, but incapable of lying to yourself or others, just to smooth over discomfort. When someone asks how you're doing, and you are not fine, you no longer say fine. When someone tries to weigh you down with guilt or obligation, you feel your shadow laugh softly in the background, and you simply say no without explanation. That no carries a power greater than any curse, because it comes from integration, from a self that has nothing left to hide. You've become allergic to your own dishonesty, and that simple authenticity terrifies people who survive only because everyone else plays their prescribed roles. Your relationships shift in the wake of this transformation. Some collapse instantly. The ones who were only ever comfortable with half of you, who could embrace your light, but never tolerate your shadow. They wither and fall away, like dead leaves stripped by a winter wind. You stop chasing them. You stop trying to contort yourself into what they need, because that version of you no longer exists. Yet at the same time, others are drawn to you like moths to a flame, people who have begun their own shadow work. People who sense in you the possibility of becoming whole. They don't always understand it, but they feel it like a frequency humming in their bones. You become a lighthouse for those wandering in the dark, a signal that integration is not only possible but powerful. And your creativity, your very way of expressing existence, shifts into something profound. Whether you're painting, writing, composing, or simply living, your work carries a depth that wasn't there before. Your shadow self brings the raw materials from the unconscious, the jagged truths, the forbidden hungers, the darkness that everyone else avoids, and your conscious self sculpts it into something meaningful, something alive. The result unsettles and comforts simultaneously. People encounter your creations and feel exposed, as though your work has reached into their chests and held up the parts they've hidden even from themselves. It disturbs them because it's real, and it comforts them because it reminds them they're not alone in their depths. Your integrated shadow has become a constant guide, whispering wisdom your conscious mind could never access on its own. It speaks in flashes of clarity. That person's smile is a weapon. Step back, or this golden opportunity tastes like ash. Refuse it. It isn't paranoia, it's perception sharpened by years of walking with your own darkness until it became second nature. You move differently now, not as someone performing an identity, but as someone embodying wholeness. Dreams, too, have transformed. You are no longer chased by shadows or haunted by nightmares. Instead, you stride through the dreamscape as its sovereign. You walk through others' dreams like doorways, leaving impressions, planting seeds, harvesting knowledge from the collective unconscious. You realize that your shadow self was always the part of you that could travel between worlds. And now that ability belongs to you. Fully, consciously, deliberately. And perhaps most striking of all is how you carry yourself in everyday life. You no longer flinch at your own anger, you've made it your ally. You no longer run from your pain, you've transmuted it into wisdom. You no longer bury your hungers, you've turned them into purposeful action. What others fear in themselves, you've accepted in yourself. What others repress, you've transformed. That's why you cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken, cannot be controlled. You are not fragmented, you are whole. And wholeness radiates a frequency that shatters illusions wherever it goes. It now sees the patterns woven into the darkness, patterns your daylight eyes could never detect. Where the light blinds itself with simplicity, the shadow notices the intricacies, the subtle movements, the unspoken signals, the silent agreements exchanged in glances. It remembers everything you once tried to forget. Every red flag you waved away with wishful thinking, every gut instinct you silenced to avoid conflict, every warning dream you dismissed because it didn't fit the story you wanted to believe. Your shadow keeps the receipts. It carries the memory of every betrayal, every manipulation, every near disaster you barely crawled away from, and now it refuses to let you stumble into those traps again. This wisdom stretches beyond defense. It is not merely about shielding you from harm. Your shadow has become a strategist, a navigator, a master of hidden maps. Where your conscious mind only sees the brightly lit front entrance with its locked gates and watchful guards, your shadow gestures toward the side alleys, the underground tunnels, the overlooked passages that lead to the same destination without the struggle. It shows you that the world is a labyrinth, but every labyrinth has hidden exits if you're willing to move in darkness. It knows in ways the light never could, that true power rarely parades itself in daylight. Real power is exchanged in the margins, in whispered conversations when the cameras turn off, in the subtle nods at closed-door meetings, in the silences that speak louder than words. And now this perception is yours. Your shadow has taught you that destruction and creation are not enemies. They are twins. One clears the field, the other plants the seed. Endings and beginnings are simply different faces of the same force. When something must be ended, a toxic bond, a draining job, a self-sabotaging pattern, your shadow shows you how to do it without hesitation, without messy threads left behind to pull you back. It knows how to close doors so tightly they never creak open again, and when you must build, whether a dream, a purpose, a new self, it provides the raw materials no one else dares touch. It gathers the compost of old grief, the ashes of burned identities, the fertilizer made from your past pain. It places this in your hands, showing you how to grow something strong, enduring, and alive from the very matter others thought would destroy you. But perhaps the most surprising gift your shadow offers is laughter. It reveals the comedy inside horror, the absurdity wrapped around fear. You begin to notice the cosmic joke hiding inside events that once broke you. You find yourself smiling at manipulations that would have once sent you spiraling. You chuckle at shadows that others scream from, not because you are cruel but because you see the illusion. This is not callousness, it is perspective. Your shadow has shown you that what humanity fears most is nothing more than paper monsters, silhouettes projected on a wall. Fear itself is a puppet show, and once you see the strings, you can never again be fooled. And they're still watching, the Coven that started this entire chain of events. They whisper about you in secret, casting nervous glances into the night, as though your shadow might slip through their walls at any moment. They try to study you to understand how their spell misfired so catastrophically. In their minds, they created a weapon meant to tear you apart. In reality, they crafted the conditions for your evolution, and now you walk as a merged being, both light and shadow, both ending and beginning, both predator and protector. They know this, they feel it, and that knowledge haunts them more than any curse you could ever cast. Because the greatest horror to those who traffic in half-truths and fragile power is not an enemy who fights them. It is someone who has already befriended everything within themselves that can be used as a weapon. They know you cannot be shamed, cannot be controlled, cannot be divided, and that realization terrifies them in ways their spells never prepared them for. They can't stop themselves. You've become their fixation, the phantom they can't exorcise, the puzzle that keeps them awake at night. What began as a ritual meant to break you has turned into their obsession. They whisper your name like an unanswered question, like a riddle whose solution slips through their fingers every time they think they've solved it. You're no longer a target in their eyes. You're an anomaly, a living paradox. Their journals overflow with sketches of your energy patterns, half-legible notes scrawled in candlelight, theories written and rewritten, as if a single phrase could decode you. Some of them have entire shelves filled with binders about you, a paper trail of their confusion. They document your movements, the shifts in your demeanor, the frequency of your appearances, the ripples you leave in the spaces you pass through. They try to map your growth, like astronomers charting constellations, hoping to find a pattern, a weakness, a repeatable formula. But here is the truth that gnaws at them with a hunger they cannot satisfy. They are beginning to realize that what happened with you was not random. It was never a mistake. It was destiny unfolding, inevitable as the tide carving cliffs into the shape of its will. You were always going to integrate your shadow, whether in solitude on some forgotten night, or in the aftermath of their misguided ritual. They didn't create this. They only accelerated the unfolding. They weren't the architects of your becoming. They were merely the spark that set tinder already soaked in potential aflame. They thought they were the authors of your downfall, but they were only ever footnotes in the story of your ascension. That realization corrodes their pride. It dissolves their sense of control. Because if you were destined to rise, then they were never powerful. They were tools, instruments, catalysts in a process that belonged to you from the start. Still, their pride won't let go. Some of them have tried to repeat their experiment. They've hunted new subjects, seeking others with shadows they could exploit, hoping to summon darkness that would obey their command. They've drawn their circles, muttered their chants, poured their desperation into ritual after ritual, but nothing works the same way twice. Sometimes their efforts yield silence, empty air, a failed spell collapsing before it begins. Sometimes the shadow emerges but clings to its owner, refusing to be weaponized, snapping back with a violence that leaves the summoner burned, scarred, or worse. And sometimes chaos erupts, raw and untamed, consuming everything in reach, but without the order or clarity they had hoped for. The more they try, the more they discover the flaw in their premise. Shadow work cannot be stolen, outsourced, or forced. It is not something you can impose upon another. It is an inner initiation, a descent only the soul itself can choose to make. To attempt to force it is like trying to make another person's heart beat by crushing it in your hands. All you create is carnage, and even then it carries no guarantee. The wiser among them, the ones who stay silent when others boast, are starting to see it. They are beginning to whisper the truth the rest cannot face, that they gave you a gift. Not the gift they intended, not the curse they meant to unleash, but a gift nonetheless. In their arrogance, they became your midwives, delivering you into the wholeness you were destined for. Their ritual didn't birth a monster, it accelerated the birth of a sovereign being. You were already walking toward that doorway, and they simply shoved you through it. The gift they gave you was clarity, speed, completion. And now, as they watch from the shadows, they cannot decide what haunts them more, that you survive their efforts, that you thrive because of them, or that they themselves may have been chosen to play this role in your story. This is what keeps them awake at night. The thought that they are not the witches in this story at all. They are not the masters of dark knowledge they imagine themselves to be. They are the catalysts, the forgotten agents of someone else's becoming, the background characters in a myth that was never theirs to control. They wanted to be feared, but now they are reduced to witnesses. And in the dark corners of their minds, they fear a truth too dangerous to say aloud, that they were never as powerful as they thought, and that in the end they may have served the very destiny they tried to destroy. They've accelerated your evolution by decades, dragging you into a confrontation that most people spend entire lifetimes avoiding. What they unleashed forced you to dive into depths you might never have willingly explored. And in doing so, they unknowingly freed you from chains you didn't even realize were still wrapped around your soul. They collapsed timelines, burned shortcuts into your journey, and stripped away illusions faster than you could have done alone. What should have been your downfall became the great initiation, and instead of breaking you, it completed you. Some of them watch you now, not only with fear but with envy. Behind their trembling hands and guarded eyes, there's jealousy, the kind that festers in silence. They see your wholeness, your seamless integration, and then they look inward at the broken mirrors of their own psyches. They know their shadows still claw at them from the edges of consciousness, demanding attention they refuse to give. They see their own unintegrated rage, their unresolved pain, their secret hungers gnawing in the dark, and they wonder, do they have the courage to do what you've done? Could they ever welcome back the parts of themselves they've exiled and feared for so long? Or are they forever trapped in the war between their masks and their truth? And here's what they're only beginning to glimpse, a secret so terrifying it shakes even their arrogance. When someone fully integrates their shadow, the transformation doesn't end with the self. It opens a door into something much larger, something vaster than one human life. Integration doesn't just grant personal power, it connects you to a web, a hidden architecture of consciousness that spans across time, space, and generations. It's as though merging with your shadow gave you a key to a collective vault that contains not just your darkness but everyone's. Your shadow self isn't merely yours anymore. It's plugged into the network of all shadows, bound to a reservoir of psychic memory and archetypal force. It flows into the vast ocean beneath the surface of humanity, the 90% of the iceberg no one admits exists. Through this current, knowledge moves, unfiltered, unexplainable, undeniable. You receive downloads of information, fragments of memory, whispers of truths that never pass through logic. You know someone is about to call before your phone lights up. You dream of events days before they unfold. You sense the unspoken traumas people hide even from themselves, not because you're psychic in the cheap sense, but because your shadow is speaking directly to theirs, sharing truths across frequencies too deep for the conscious mind to register. This is why people feel naked in your presence, why conversations with you feel like confessions, even when they swear they said nothing, because in a very real sense, their shadows are whispering to yours, telling the stories their conscious selves are too fragile to hold, and you listen without effort, without intrusion. It isn't eavesdropping, it's resonance. You have become fluent in the language beneath language. This network does more than give you vision, it gives you strength. You are no longer limited to your own reserves of energy. When you falter, you draw from the collective shadow, tapping into the raw, unprocessed power of billions of lives. When you face the impossible, you have access to the memories of everyone who has ever faced something similar and survived. Their strategies, their resilience, their endurance flow to you as sudden intuition, as a thought that feels like your own, but carries the weight of 1,000 voices behind it. You've gained an invisible council of survivors, advisors, warriors, sages, and wanderers. an ancestral chorus that hums beneath every choice you make. And the witches sense it. They feel it in the way shadows bend when you enter a room, how darkness clings to your outline like a loyal crown. They feel it in the way silence deepens around you, as though the air itself recognizes your authority. They know with a dread they cannot put into words that they didn't just merge you with your own darkness. They opened a gate. They accidentally initiated you into something ancient, something vast, something that existed long before their coven scribbled its first spell. Their books alluded to it, of course, fragments buried in footnotes, warnings wrapped in metaphor, legends of the great shadow, the unbroken mirror, the sovereign of the veil. They memorized the words but never grasped their meaning. They thought these were myths, allegories for... They mistook balance and discipline for mere metaphors. They never realized they were reading about a true initiation, an ancient order that existed long before their rituals, one you now belong to, and that is what terrifies them most. You are no longer just one of their mistakes. You've become living proof of a truth they've spent their lives avoiding. The path they circle, but never dare to walk, is real. The very thing they feared, total integration, is not only possible, but inevitable. In trying to prevent it, they unknowingly became the instruments of its arrival. That's all for today, dear Father. I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me to trust you even when no physical evidence is present. Let me believe in your constant presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts toward me are for prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always hearing my voice. I offer this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am deeply grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video spoke to you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please